Thank you very much for introduction. I hope you can hear me. It's very unusual settings for me. Thank you for the signs. I will try also to not to lose my microphone in my storytelling. As you already understood, this talk will be in English. I hope it's all fine, but in any case, discussion we can also do in German if it's needed. So let's start with the topic where we are now. I will talk about circular economy today, but today we are not yet in a circular economy. Where we are living in a linear economy. What it means actually, it means in terms of resources use, we take resources from Earth, we do something, produce something out of resources or manufacture something out of these resources, and then we use it as a product and then we throw it away. This is an unfortunate situation where we live in right now. And according to the statistics of Circular Economy Foundation, more than 90% of all global resources is currently wasted. So that's actually the core problem, which I will try to address today. And what is happening as a problem out of that, waste brings a lot of environmental risks. And I think that conversation for me also connected very much to generation problem, because if we think now, people who are born in 2020, in the next 70 years of their life, they will experience extreme weather conditions, mainly because of the temperature rise. So if we continue extract resources and use them according to the current principle, we actually can observe the temperature can grow globally more than 4 degrees. This is, of course, something which concerns a lot the current generation, and this is something what I also want to address in the current talk, why we have to change it. Circular economy. Circular economy is one of the approach to address this global environmental risks. It's not a solution for everything, but it's something which can also contribute to change the system, which we know now. And just to explain in a brief, what is circular economy? Sometimes it's confused with recycling, but it's definitely more than recycling. Something which can bring systemic change. And just to think about that, you can start with the idea of it is about eliminating waste in the beginning of the process, in the beginning of product design and production processes. So we have to look on the production in the first place, but it's also about how we use our products, how we use our materials, and how long we should use it so that we can keep the value as long as possible. And last but not least, principle here is also about regeneration. Regeneration of nature, regeneration of materials means which materials we select and how to use them. However, for people who work in the circular economy, like for example, myself, or trying to push this topic more further, what is currently said that our circular economy or circularity is actually decreasing. According to the same statistics of Circular Economy Foundation, in 2018 it was said that only 9% or 9.1% of the whole global economy is circular. And just this year, they published new circular economy gap report, and it was said it's already 6.9. So we're actually declining in this phase, which is obviously for people who are working is quite sad. And why are we declining? On the one hand, it's clearly because we cannot keep up with the recirculation of materials as fast as we can. It's a technical issue. But on the other hand, you can imagine that the volume of all materials and products which are coming to the markets is also increasing. So we actually extract for production and consumption even more annually. And that's why this keeping up in recirculations become problematic. It's also obviously structural problems. It's not only who consumes or who produces, but it's actually structural issues. So if you just Google something around particular sectors, like for example, fashion sector, already today it's becoming 10% of a global CO2 emission is actually coming from the fast fashion. So it means something that we produce more to consume faster. So it's something where we can carry user and production together as a part of the problem. It's not only in fast fashion. For example, on topic of electronics, planned obsolescence. So we actually plan products to last shorter so that we can buy more. So it's also the issue. So it's also how we grow with our consumptions or how we trick consumers to buy more. And last but not least example is the food waste, for example. I mean, we had a situation when we, for example, talked on a Green Week, another mess to participants about food waste. all as one say food waste is bad. We don't want to have food waste. So awareness already there. But for example, in Germany, more than 10 million tons of food wasted annually. And that's why the action is also very needed. So something which is not working is also not working in the system. Zooming in on Berlin. So we are now in Berlin, and I'm also will talk from Berlin perspective in this case. It's a capital city, it's the biggest city in Germany, and generally the trend for the cities is very similar for the big cities. So for example, in Berlin, population grew in the last 10 years approximately 10%, and it will continue growing. And this is not only for Berlin relevant, for all global megapolises, the situation is the same. Population is growing. It means also consumption is growing in the cities. So, for example, here is a figure, 1.5 million tons of municipal waste. It's something which is coming from households, so from us as citizens and from industries. This is what is current number for Berlin out of total number 7 million tons of waste, which is generated annually also in Berlin. And this is kind of similar situation for all big cities. You can imagine cities are not the one who actually produce mostly, but that's something where a lot of consumption happening. That's why it leads to the whole accumulation of this waste in the cities. And this is something which I think is very important to address, especially for the cities, this topic of circularity and resource consumption. That's why just to mention in terms of problem settings, it's clearly a structural issue. It's clearly something which is not working in the system from production and from consumption, but it's also becoming a cultural problem. We as consumers, we as citizens, start getting used to consume more, which actually lead to our more development of a wasteful culture. Maybe also a little bit of in the current settings of Republica main mottos. I looked up on the level of what is the differences across generation for the topic of circular economy and for the topic of environmental awareness. In 2022, German Environmental Agency published a study around how aware Germans actually about environmental issues. In terms of awareness, it was more than 2,000 people actually asked. A survey was conducted approximately more than 2,000 people with generations above 14 years old. And what was highlighted that actually every German person, or most of them across different generations, is quite aware about environmental issues. But towards the actions, there is quite different situation happening. So awareness, from awareness to action, there is still a gap in terms of how we can address this topic. And what is mentioned here, so I also included boomers as generation, not only ending with generation X in this case. And actually here's my grandma on the photo itself, because that's the person from whom I learned. It's important to sew and repair. And I think that's why for the topic of circularity, it's also important to mention that it's not something new, but it's something which is getting forgotten. And that's why the generation of boomers is something which definitely should look up for that. And according to the study which I mentioned at the beginning, it was actually said that this is the most consistent generation in terms of action for circularity, because they're the one who do make choices for the more sustainable, for more energy efficient products, and looking for that perspective. However, if you look on the younger generation, for example, Generation Z, they are the most active right now in terms of environmental risk, also because they are the most concerned for the future of their own, what's going to happen, because that's why the point that they are quite often, we have observed, for example, Fridays for Future, that's quite many young people going out there. However, they are the most inconsistent right now in decision or applying awareness into action. Why it's like that? Because they're also a little bit trapped in their own unclarities, what is actually right to do. So there is a lot of clarification has to happen and the direction toward that, what actually good consumption or where we should look upon. What is, for example, difference to Gen Y, that would be already my generation, is also quite aware generation in terms of problems which we're facing, but they already kind of are trapped in the situation, okay, my life, my family, I have to make commitments to something and I need to make decisions around that. So this is different approach how we can address this generation. And the most challenging, this would be generation of my parents, Generation X. They are the one who grew up in the linear economy, And they are the one who actually first way appeared as a normality. And that's one who we really need to pick it up and see how they can actually imply their action towards circular economy. About us, maybe also to mention why I'm talking about all that. So we are a non-profit organization, Circular Berlin, who really try to address the topic of circular economy from consumption and production for our different target groups, including citizens. And our motto is basically, start to change where you are. It's a global problem, it's a global issue, and sometimes we become overwhelmed how to address these topics. But that's why our way out to address it is actually action on the spot, action on the place where you are. Also, maybe to mention here, in terms of what we're doing, so since our beginning, we started working on more than 20 projects already in Berlin until today, across different areas. And we also are building a community. We also have our own network, which is more than 100 individuals already join us, basically the one who see the way out through circularity and who also want to commit to this transformation. And we also do a lot of educational activities. So since 2020, for example, we were able to enroll more than 600 participants to our education and kind of way out what you can do to transform your own efforts towards circular economy. Maybe some examples into this. One particular educational project is called Fit for Circular Economy, which is funded by Industry Master Plan in Berlin, so it's from a local Senate in Berlin. This is a project which addresses people from vocational training. So we work with two schools in Berlin, coming from vocational trainings. One is focusing on the food and another is focusing on construction. So you can imagine people who participate in this educational experiences between 15 and 22. That would be the age. One interesting learnings which we derive right now, we are right in the middle of the project, is actually giving a hope to these participants and showing that they also could be part of the process of change because they're quite young sometimes, and they don't see that they can impact something. They don't see that they actually can address the problem because it always seems like somebody who is older should talk about that. So it's also important to integrate them in the process of learnings and decision making around that. Also, it's about fun and engagement. They are very practical. They like to do the workshops where it's very hands-on and where they can test out. And what is also very important is to show real-life examples. So sometimes topic is very big, sometimes the topic is very theoretical, but actually to show that it's already happening right now, you have a positive experiences, you have a positive examples, it's very important to bring for them, and they can go and talk and see, okay, I can learn from that, I can redirect to that, I can be inspired by that. Another point I also want to mention, it's not a project, but it's actually the idea of a community which we have as NGO by ourselves. I do think it's addressed mainly Gen Y for the work of circular economy. And I do think for Gen Y it's a lot about self-realization. It's about to understand where I can make an impact and how. Because sometimes, like usually in our community, people who join us, they're already working somewhere, they're already participating somewhere, but they maybe don't see a way out in this activity, especially maybe they are doing it on their own work. And they're really looking for the community where transformation, first of all, there is positive transformation is addressed, but also with whom they can exchange and with whom they can see, okay, I can contribute something. That's why we work a lot with volunteers as well who want to contribute to the topic of circular economy as transformation. And I think for Gen Y, it's very important this impact of empowerment. It's very important that they can find a role through the activities where they can also contribute. So it's also something which I think it's very important to address when we build up or when we talk about this generation, my generation in this case. And I do think it's very important to find your area where you can participate and engage, because it's a lot of similar activities already out there. So I kind of highlighted here key elements for this generation is empowerment, be able to make them change makers, self-realization as a topic, also looking around real life experiences and also finding like-minded community. Last project, which I also want to highlight, and I do think when we started that, it was not actually thinking about Gen X, but it seems to me it is the Gen X project. It's also a project funded by Senate, Taken Spaces for Circular Economy, where we address mainly the people from I would say already older generation or generation of my parents. And we are talking here about tech as a deep tech, the tech from the companies which are coming, for example, from the optic and photonic sectors, very specific, very complicated sectors. And what we observed there, that it's not only about empowerment, as I mentioned, for example, earlier, but it's actually about bringing together and identifying problems still. I do think it's a generation where we still need to talk about the problems, where we still need to identify the way out of these problems. And that's very important to identify common objective for this type of, in our case, companies, but I also think it's in this case of generation element. So I do think it's a generation where we still need to convince why we need to make these actions and why we need to work together. However, it's also nice activity, so don't give up on this generation. That's what I would say. It's still important to talk and convince. Maybe just some final words from me before going to the discussion. Quite often I feel that the topics of environment or environmental actions, it's a very demotivating field because people think it's not us. It's something which is happening globally. It's something which I cannot do much. But I do think we shouldn't give up and hope on that. And I do think it's important also to start journey from yourself or rethink how we can impact this problem. And I do think from the perspective of circular economy, the first question is really about rethinking and about when we purchase something, when we buy something, it's about, do you really need this? This is quite often a question which we forget when we go into our outside world, but it's still important to keep in mind. However, there's other elements, for example, for whom we vote, or whom we select, which decision we are making, or also which financial resources we have, and how we redirect these financial resources either through the banks or, for example, through own consumption. It's also a very important instrument which we should empower ourselves and use it. And finally, I do think it's important if we want to make a change, systemic change, we actually should get involved to different communities which are already fighting for that. And that's what I would not only say, join Circular Berlin, but there are many other organizations which are also working in a similar direction, which either you donate or you join by yourself with your experience, with your knowledge, and become a change maker. So go on for that. And on that point, I don't know which I'm with the time, but I will end my presentation open for the for the questions in any language. I will.
Thank you. Jetzt aber, ich komme direkt hier hin.
Kann ich auf Deutsch sprechen?
Do you speak German?
Okay, ich formuliere meine Sprache. Es ist keine Frage, die ich habe. Hört man nichts? I can also speak in English. Okay. Also ich spreche auf Deutsch. Es ist keine Frage, die ich habe, aber eine Anregung, wie jeder persönlich sofort anfangen kann. Ich arbeite an einem Projekt, wo es darum geht, seinen eigenen Computer länger zu benutzen, weil in Kürze läuft der Support für Windows 10 auf und viele Geräte können aus Hardwaregründen, die Hardware ist völlig in Ordnung, aber Microsoft sagt, nee, geht nicht mehr. Also es kann kein Windows 11 installiert werden und ich arbeite damit an einer Initiative, wo wir auf das Problem aufmerksam machen und auch in Zusammenarbeit mit Repair-Cafés viele Möglichkeiten auch hier in Berlin schon auf unserer Homepage haben, wo man hingehen kann und sich helfen lassen kann. Und selber organisiere ich auch ganz viele Veranstaltungen. Wer darüber mehr wissen will, ich habe noch ein paar Flyer dabei, kann vielleicht mich kurz ansprechen. Danke.
Kann ich kurz reagieren?
Ja.
Also sehr gut, dass Sie das ansprechen. Hinter Sie sitzt mein Kollege Remy und er eigentlich arbeitet in Richtung Elektronik und auf jeden Fall es lohnt auszutauschen.
Können die anderen gerade auch nicht gut hören? Yeah, it is delayed. That's also, if you're talking in the mic, when you have a question, take out your... okay.
I should answer in English. Sorry, I can summarize for you. I got it. There was a impulse that about repair and electronics mainly on the computers, and this lady actually organized quite many events, and she made promotion. If you're interested, please talk to her.
So I cannot hear you at all. Okay. What other questions? What could be the first things people do when they leave the talk to also contribute to this vision?
Well, I think that's what I mentioned. The most ideas are in our head. And I think it's very important first to rethink your own consumption as an individual and to see how we approach the consumption. The second thing I would say, we really need to inform ourselves about how we behave and how we consume. This is not an easy task. It takes time. But I think there's a lot of resources, like, for example, also mentioned here, which really, in Berlin especially, it's really simple to find, but we need to invest time into this. That's what I also would empower everyone to do, to think from your own consumption, how you can find the right resources. It's not about everything doing perfectly, but it's about to start.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Really interesting. Yeah, I'm wondering, there are a lot of questions. Where does your funding come from? And what are your cooperation partners? Or what are your next projects, your future plans? Or do you cooperate with other countries, maybe?
Thanks for the question. We're, I would call it bottom-up initiative, so we don't have institutional fundings. No. There is can you hear? Does it work? Okay. All right, sorry. I will repeat that myself again. We don't have institutional funding, so we are funded mainly through the project-based activities. So most of the fundings, I would say 90% coming right now from different areas, either it's foundations or, for example, I mentioned that Berlin Senat also supports several projects. And we do have EU fundings, that's why we also cooperate with other countries. So it could be also cooperations, but it's always pilot-based activities. So the fundings, whatever we coming also from EU, they are also oriented on which activities we are doing for Berlin. But also other fundings from or financial streams for us would come from educational activities and from our community. So meaning that we also have a fee if somebody wants to become a member. And member could be individual and organization. That would be also one financial stream. But generally we quite open-minded organizations, so we do cooperate with many organizations in terms of realization, project realization activities, fundings, but it obviously has to fit in our values and in the circular economy domain.
So we got 2 more minutes. Is there another question? But then, are you still approachable after this? Are you still here?
I'm here for some time, but I will have to leave approximately 12 something.
Okay, so what I can recommend you is everybody who wants to talk to you, you can gather in the back.
Yeah.
And if you actually want to sit down with people, you could go upstairs and there's like seating areas as you have time or not.
Yeah, and I would also do following thing. There are 3 colleagues of mine who maybe can raise their hands. Inga as well. So if they are still here, they will be longer here. And they also, Felipe, nice. And they can also be approached.
Perfect. So like there is the co-working space upstairs. Feel free to go there, gather here, and have fun. Thank you so much. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you so much.
See you later.